Guess who's back? That's right, it's Jean Price. It's her new fall season, and she's ready with more real conversations with real people. So make sure to tune in this Wednesday to welcome back our host, Jean Price, on Real Talk with Jean Price.
Welcome to Real Talk with Jean Price. One of the things I said last year when I had the stroke, it taught me some things. One of the things I said was, I remember feeling so afraid, and I remember asking a question, who said that I wasn't supposed to be afraid? And one of the things that it taught me here a year later, my trust in God has increased so much, and it taught me to appreciate being here. Because I didn't have to be here. I just heard on yesterday the news of somebody that's in a coma with a stroke. And I thought about myself, like, who am I that I'm still here, to be a voice for God, to be able to talk about things. And now in 2021, I really learned that life is so precious. It's not about things. I could go out right now, do what I want, buy what I want, travel the world. But you know what I choose to do? I choose to serve God, to work Real Talk and do the things that I like to do, because it's really not about things, and you really learn the value of life is truly being here. That's important.
Good evening, everyone. I am so glad you tuned into Real Talk. It is a delight to have you with us tonight. Listen, we're going toward our spring series. We're going to be having more guests, more topics, more issues. You don't want to miss all the surprises that we have in store for you. And like every Wednesday, I first want to thank my production team for a job always well done. I want to thank all of you that tune in every Wednesday at 6:30. Your support. We are so grateful for that. And listen, you have an opportunity. You never know what we might have in store. We want you to like, we want you to share, and most of all, we want you to comment. We want you to ask those questions that you may have in your mind. Maybe something is going to spark you tonight about what we're going to be talking about. This is probably one of my favorite topics that we're going to be discussing, because the kind of mindset that I have, I love to be able to just take what's in my mind and put it into action as far as creativity. So we have a wonderful guest that's going to be joining us today. She's just amazing. She's an author. She's creative. She writes. She does so many wonderful things. And we want you to listen to what she has to say. Sade, the writer, is going to come. She's going to join us. Tune in. I want you to watch tonight. You might have a question for her about the creativity that's in you. You might want to talk about that. So today, thank you again for joining me on Real Talk. I want to welcome my guest tonight, Sade, the writer. Come on out and join me on Real Talk.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I am truly honored. Thank you so much.
Well, listen, this is, again, like I said in my intro, this is probably one of my favorite topics, because I'm a creative person as well, and I like different genres. Like, I love to write. Can't sing, but I love to sing. I like all those things. I love music. Oh my goodness. I'm a worshiper at heart, and I have to say this. I say to my family, if I could sing, they would be in trouble, because I probably sing. But let me get out the way. Sade, welcome to Real Talk. We want you to greet the guests tonight. They're watching. They're going to be streaming. They're going to be chiming in. They may have some questions that they want to ask. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. My name is Sade, the writer. I am a published author, a performing poet, screenwriter, and creative writing instructor. I'm from Long Island, New York, and I've been living in the Tampa Bay area for about 7 months. And my collection of poetry is titled Side Pieces. It's available wherever books are sold online, but the majority of my readers purchased either in person from me or through Amazon. And you can find me on my website, The Chocolate Muse. So that's chocolate spelled the normal way, and muse, MUSE.com, where I list courses. I have one-on-one like mentoring services, ghostwriting, as well as creative consulting.
Well, I think the question is probably on everybody's mind, and it's always good. How did you get started, and how did you know about that creativity? Especially, let's start with the writing piece. I want to know about that a little bit.
Sure. So similar to you saying you've always been interested in love, like music and art. I as well. Like I grew up, I danced for a long time. I mean, I'm not, Misty Copeland or anything like that, but I danced for years. My mom kept me, involved in a lot of different stuff, dancing, singing in the church choir. And I was really interested in film originally. I wanted to like become a film producer, and I was discouraged by like an older person in my family who said that, in order to be a film producer, you have to have money, and you don't have that. And, they discouraged me from pursuing that. But I always knew that I loved writing as well. Like I would come up with these, grandiose scenarios and these characters. And so I started writing after there was a 5th grade writing assignment. And so I created this story, and my teacher was really impressed, and the other students were really impressed. And I thought, like, maybe I have something here. Like, maybe I am like talented in that way. And so I continued to write, and I would share my stories with my friends and other people in my school. And I would write like a chapter a day and leave them like on cliffhangers and stuff. But this is before, social media. We entertained ourselves like the old
Right.
so like passing notes, that's essentially what it was. And then I went to a Christian school, upper room Christian school in Long Island. And when I graduated high school, they pray over each senior.
Okay.
So at this point, I was going to school for pre-med. Okay.
Because I'm wondering, how do we go?
Right. Because I was, I come from a very traditional family, and they didn't see writing or anything in the arts as something like safe and stable, which I completely understand. Like that generation, it makes sense, and I'm not faulting them for thinking that way or coercing me in any way, but that's just the way that it was. And so I had applied to school. I was going to Virginia State University with this pre-med biology major. And biology I love, but math is not my strong suit. Neither is any of the other sciences. But I was going to, do it for my parents, And at the graduation, the prayer over me was that my words would be heard all over the world.
Wow.
And the administration didn't know that I was a writer. That wasn't something that was, knowledge to them. And they assumed that I was going to school for medicine.
Right.
But when the pastor said that over me, and we didn't have a personal relationship. So I want to make it very clear that this is a divine word from God. It wasn't anything else. And at that moment, I told my mom, like, listen, when I go to school, I'm changing my major. I'm changing into English, and I'm going to pursue this writing career. Like I have to. I felt that conviction after that day. And so, that's where it began.
Wow. It's said, wow, that's interesting. I'll ask you another question when we get back to that. But evidently you tapped into the creative side of yourself. I have to go back because you said something about film. Did you ever go back and look into the film aspect of your giftings, or you just stayed strictly with the writing?
So at my college, I did take a couple of film courses, and I was able to go to a film camp that Blair Underwood's father funded. It was in Virginia, in Petersburg. And so Tim Reed was a part of it. It was like a really exclusive thing. So I was excited to be able to get into that. And I loved it. And eventually my thought process was that, you know, I'm going to write, I'm going to sell these books, I'm going to be this person. And then at some point down the line, I would get an opportunity to, you know, create a film or write a film. I didn't think that it would happen so early in my career. You know, again, but God, we have our own plans, but and so yeah, I took some classes, but in my head, my thought process was like, at, you know, years later, I would eventually get into film.
Okay. I have to ask this. Did you ever go through any deals that you tried to get into and they were rejected? So there's a quote by John Lingate that says, "You can please some of the people all the time. You can please all the people some of the time, but you can't please all the people all the time." So how did you overcome if there was any rejection? Because there's not always a yes.
Oh yeah.
In other words, how did you deal with the no?
Yeah, it's if you're a creative, just expect a no, right? Or multiple no's before you get a yes. It's just, that's just the nature of the industry. Unless you're truly like you know, have those connections, but even still, it's, you know, an opportunity for someone to say no. But yeah, I would submit to online magazines and writing contests, and I got a ton of no's, and it was discouraging at times. I just felt like I knew that I had a talent. I knew that I had this gift, but when you're receiving these constant rejections, it does take a toll on like your self-confidence, and you start to question like, maybe I should teach, you know, if, you know, those who can't do teach, that's what they say. But I didn't, it took me a while to really get over that. But I did, you know, it's like 50 no's and then one yes. But my process was that this is what I want to do. This is what I'm passionate about. And I just have to push through. I don't have any like anecdotes or anything, but I would just say if writing or anything in the arts is something that you're truly passionate about, that you feel like this is your gift, then just keep going. You have to, like, you're going to get that yes. And even if it's not a ton of viewers, or even if your first book doesn't sell, it's going to impact those, you know, those 5 buyers, those 5 readers, the people that are following you on Instagram or Facebook. It's going to impact someone, and that's who needed to hear it, or that's who needed to read it.
That's true. So when you begin to write then, Sade, how do you keep your inspiration going? Because is it just, do you ever get like the writer's block? Because you could be, you know, in your mind, you're writing and that creativity is flowing. And then or maybe is there a time where it just kind of, man, I don't know what to write for the next chapter?
Yeah, so I actually have a workshop titled The Writer's Block Cure.
Oh, okay.
That was a great segue. Yeah, so I created this workshop back in 2019. And because I did struggle with writer's block, and what I realized is that I don't believe that writer's block exists in the sense of a lack of inspiration. I feel like writer's block is more of a confidence issue versus an inspiration issue. And in my workshops, I talk about that, and I provide different tools to help the creatives create a continuous stream of inspiration. So that way, when this blockage comes, they have a way to break through that. But at the core of it, for me personally, it was more of like self-doubt, the opinions of other people clouding my mind and clouding my judgments on what I'm writing. That's what it was for me. And that's what I believe it is for a lot of creatives. It's about that, not because inspiration is everywhere. You know, the people, nature, there's so many different things. I talk about, you know, books and art and film, all of those things you can use as inspiration outside of your own life, you know, and you just have to get over yourself and put those words on paper.
Yeah. So how did you find the time? Because I think in life today, trying to balance so much, kind of want to talk about that a little bit. How did you balance that? The writing, if you're working, if you're in school, how did you find the time to balance it all?
So quarantine was a gift and a curse in a way. But prior to that, I had to make time. I'm a single mom. I was working full time in the sales industry, customer facing industry. So my hours weren't, it wasn't a 9 to 5 until about 2 years ago. So I just had to I had to set time aside to make it work.
Right.
And I have my daughter here now as well.
Okay.
So my advice to anyone is just like set a timer.
Yes.
Because if you think about what you do throughout the day, right, you're scrolling through social media, you're daydreaming, whatever it is, you can take that time away from those distractions and take the time to write.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm sorry. Hold on. One
That's
moment.
okay.
Okay. But another thing that I like to do when I'm not able to get down to like a computer or to a notebook is I use the voice notes on my phone. So if I'm going for a walk and an idea comes to me, I'll just use my voice notes to say that thought. And then when I do get a chance, I can just write it down or transcribe it to my laptop or a notebook or something like that.
So how does your work get, and I know I'm probably dabbling into your workshop, and I'm just asking, I need to probably just sit in your workshop and get all the answers, right? It really makes me wonder, like, how do you know? First of all, there has to be some kind of proofreading to what you write, or some kind of, because I guess what I'm saying is you can write something, right? And you can help me. It makes sense in your head, meaning the person that's writing.
Right.
Somebody else reading it, it might not make sense. So what do you do in a case like that? Is there proofing that's done? Is there like somebody that could be a little analytical, or maybe some kind of, constructive criticism?
Mm-hmm.
How does that process work?
Sure. So I have a few friends that I trust that are like avid readers, that know, how a story should flow and things like that. And I've made other friends as of lately that are actual writers and in the creative field, and to use as like, what do you think about this? Or do you think this makes sense? But when I was publishing my poetry collection, I hired someone to do that professionally just to make sure. And that's an advice I would give to anyone that's looking to publish, is to hire, there's professionals that do it, and they're like really good price points as well, depending on like how long your book is. But yeah, I would definitely suggest hiring a professional to review it before publishing and putting your book out there.
Understood. And as far as I know a little bit about it, and as far as like people that want to self-publish, because there's some people that like to self-publish, right?
Yes.
In your workshop, do you kind of teach how do you get that? Is it ISBN number or number that you get for your book? So do you kind of go through those steps because maybe somebody can't financially afford to get somebody to do it for right now? So do you walk through steps of self-publishing?
Yeah, so I actually self-published my book, and because now that's the beauty of like today is that you don't have to, submit to a publishing house and go through that whole process. And I've heard horror stories about like royalties and rights and things like that. So I self-published my book. When you do self-publish, like you said, you definitely want to purchase your own ISBN because that gives you full ownership of the book. The ISBN is about $190. So it's, to me, for what you're getting, it's an investment. It's an investment in yourself, and you could spend that at a nice restaurant. You could spend that on shoes. So I think if this is what you want to do, just pull the trigger, do it. You have to do it. But yeah, so
Wow, that's, I love the word that you kept using a lot tonight, and I hope my guests are listening. And oftentimes the word creativity, to be creative, to be creative. And I like how you talked a lot about inspiration. So when I think of inspiration, let me say, when I think of inspiration, I feel like it's something that God has downloaded inside of me, and it not only it inspires other people. So with your writings, do you think about how it's going to inspire others? Like, what do you look to get out of your writings?
So I just started writing what I was feeling, right? And I didn't have an intention behind, I want people to feel this way, or I want people to get this out of it. It was, something that I was dealing with, something, that was, I was being very emotionally vulnerable. And when people read the book and they would get things that I didn't intend, like, oh, this made me feel like this. And,
Okay, wow.
when you were going through this, I felt, something similar, or I know a friend that was going through a similar situation. I had one of my male friends say that, it changed his perspective on how he was, moving forward, going to, get into relationships with women because of what I read, just reading my perspective on being hurt and stuff like that. But yeah, I think the best books come without having an agenda, know? So I always say, there's a old school poet, Wordsworth. He said that poetry is the spontaneous flow of emotion. And that's what I emphasize in my workshops, is that you want to write first and then edit second. So just whatever you're feeling, just get that out on paper, get it out. And then the editing process is secondary. That's where that inspiration comes from. It's a natural flow of emotion, and you just go for it and then get back to it later when you're ready to publish and do that, and then go through the editing process.
I like that. So a person that journals, like some people may journal a lot. I don't know if you ever journaled or anything. Do you think that journaling assists and helps when somebody wants to begin to write? Because a lot of times, to your point, and I'm so glad you mentioned that, Sade, because a lot of times people journal what they're thinking, what they're feeling, maybe what they're going through at that moment. But then maybe what they have in their journal could actually be turned into a book or a storyline or something. Now, people sing about it. We have singers out there that sing what they've gone through and, whatever. But as far as what you're saying, could that come from people journaling?
Yes. Okay. So I actually recently started journaling, oddly enough, because, where now I have like more privacy. So I was always afraid. When I was younger, I had a diary. My older cousin read it and I was completely embarrassed. So I was always like, journals, I don't know, because all of my thoughts and feelings are out there. But it's very therapeutic. And at my workshops, I start out with like a prompt question or a journal question to get the inspiration flowing. But journaling is a great way to begin the writing process if you're just starting out. And, I've looked back at some of the things that I've written recently, and I'm like, wow, this could be the beginning of something, a story or a character or something like that. But yeah, journaling is a great way to start if you don't know where to begin.
Wow, that's interesting. Well, we're going to take a commercial break to my viewing audience, and we're going to come back with Sade, the writer, because there's some more things that I think she can drop on us and tell us about being creative, just taking that inspiration that's inside of you and turning it into something, you know what? You might want to write about it. We'll be right back on Real Talk with Jean Price.
See yourself as an artist when you go to work every day. See yourself as someone who gets to create a masterpiece through your work regardless of what you do. I think every single one of us has a need for creative expression. We all have in our hearts a longing to go to work every day and to create. That's part of what makes us special. Actually, let me put it this way. We all have a creative longing to realize our potential. It's one of the most fundamental of all human hungers. Because Edison's a fascinating guy. Getting close to 2,000 patents in his life. He was asked, what's the secret of your genius? You know what he said? These people get up every day. They do many things. I get up every day. I do a few. I think it's an impotent way to live to say it's because of other people and it's because of circumstances that I'm not playing my best game. My life changed when I realized a simple idea, which is life is a mirror. And life gives us not what we want. Life gives us who we are.
Good evening. Welcome back to Real Talk with Jean Price. We had the opportunity to talk to a guest tonight. Her name is Sade the writer, and she's been giving us some great insight. If you're out there and you're thinking about writing, or you have already written poetry, or you want to dabble in film, you might want to continue on the second half of our show, because we've been getting some great tips on how to write. Welcome, Sade, back to Real Talk with Jean Price.
Hi.
Hi, Sade. Welcome. We've been really having just a great conversation in the first half of the show. Thank you so much for enlightening us on writing and the inspiration. And we talked about a little creativity and how to get started. Now, for you with writing, is that your career, or is that something that you do on the side?
So it's actually something that I turned into my career, my full-time career, about 2 months ago.
Okay.
So I decided to take the leap into, on entrepreneurship, and but I've been, doing my workshops since 2019, and that was something that I was, doing on the side. But moving to Tampa, it gave me sort of like a fresh start, and I was able to really do, more thinking and figuring out the things that work, and making sure that I'm in a financial position to take this leap.
Right.
But yeah, so now I do it full time.
Okay, because that was going to be my next question. How does somebody that you feel it, you know it's something you want to do, and I'm so glad you were very transparent about that you took a leap of faith,
Yeah.
and that it takes a leap of faith, to jump out there, because a lot of people talk about entrepreneurship,
Mhm.
but entrepreneurship, that's a heavy responsibility.
Yeah.
So you're in a place now, the writing is your full-time career. How often do you do the workshops?
So the first one was just in Tampa last month, January 9th. And the plan is to do them bi-monthly. So
Okay.
the next one will be in March of this year. And I'm just waiting to confirm the date. So once I have that, as long as you go on my website,
Okay.
and I'll post it on Facebook as well once the dates are live, and you'll be able to purchase tickets through Eventbrite and my website.
Okay. Now, are the workshops in person only, or can it be on Zoom or any other type of platform? Like for somebody that's watching tonight, I know we have some guests that I know personally that are watching. Of course, they're from New York. So suppose they want to be a part of it. How would they become a part of it?
Yeah, so I'm actually working on setting a virtual option on the off months that I have them in person.
Okay.
So by April, I'll have more information about like the virtual options and things like that for people, because I still have people, readers, from Long Island and Virginia. I went to school in Virginia. I have people in Virginia that were interested in the workshop. So I'm definitely trying to set something up that way I can have access to more people, and more people can have access to the workshops.
That's awesome. And what is the price for the workshops for anybody that, just want to be, like you said, once you get it all set up, will you on your website have pricing, as much information as possible for people that want to take a part in it?
Yeah, so the workshops are $20. It's 2.5 hours. All you have to come is, all you need to bring is yourself and an open mind. I provide writing utensils. There's like light refreshments, and the muse. I use music and art, music and visual arts as a source of inspiration. And the best part for me is really having other creatives connect with each other. I try to set up the seating so that way you're forced to talk to people, and engage in like thought-provoking conversations with the journal prompts that I have. I have icebreakers so that way people feel really comfortable. And the biggest thing that the biggest responses that I receive from my attendees is that I created a safe space, that they felt that they were able to share and write freely without judgments or anything like that. So that makes me feel honored. If you don't get anything else, the fact that you felt safe enough to share,
Yeah.
something intimate with me that you want to turn into a story is, a dream come true, honestly.
I want to talk about that a little further. That's really good. When you're in the workshop, is there a time where your students have to speak publicly about what they write about? Like, do you have that too as well?
Yes, so it's optional. I don't,
Okay.
force anyone to share if they don't want to, but I do ask. So I begin with a question, like sort of like a journal prompt. And if they would like to share, they can. But I do encourage everyone to at least introduce themselves, and say something about themselves. That way, everyone can know who they are, and that's a good conversation starter as well.
Yeah. One of the things that, well, you mentioned COVID, Sade, and there's so many other things, of course, you can see all over the news, right?
Yes.
That's going on in the world that's negative.
Mhm.
So, how do you encourage your writers, or how do you continue to inspire them to write about things that are positive and even helpful? Because writing, like, we're visuals, apparently. You're visual. We're visual. I know I'm a visual person. And I'm learning, even at my age and in this season, to literally sit and read. And, how do we help? How does writing help what we're living in as a lot of adversity?
Hmm. I feel that writing connects us. Like it makes the world feel a little bit smaller. And like with my book, I wrote about things that I was dealing with emotionally and not expecting other people to really understand it. I just was like, I need to get this out there. This was bubbling up and I needed to put it out there into the world. And to hear other people say that they've understood where I was coming from, or they've been through a similar situation, it makes you feel more connected. It makes you feel like I'm not the only one. You're not alone in your struggle or whatever it is that you're going through. There's so many people going through similar childhood traumas and relationship issues and insecurities, and when you put those out there into the world, you give another person an opportunity not to feel alone. So that's the best part.
I love that. And you know what? Even listening to you talk, what thought that came to my mind was your writing becomes the voice.
Mm.
And sometimes, because you mentioned trauma, sometimes in trauma, you're made to be silent. But
Yes.
writing can now be the voice to speak. And when I have something that I started writing, mind you, it's been years. And, maybe I'll get some inspiration from you tonight.
I cannot wait to read it. I cannot wait to read it.
Oh man, oh I got so far to go. But I started something and it's actually sitting right here on my desk. And part of it is that part of my writing talks about speaking, because I was made and told, don't say anything.
Mm-hmm.
So as you're talking, I'm sitting there saying to myself, wow, writing becomes that voice that people can just, you want to be heard sometime. You know what I'm saying? So as you're talking, I'm sitting there going, yeah, that's what writing is. You're inspiring me to maybe pick that piece that I started. It has to be about maybe 20 years ago. Maybe I could be a little off on the number, but I started writing it because I wanted the voice of what I was feeling and what I had gone through as a child. I went through a childhood trauma, to be a voice now to help others. Because I go and I speak about it, but how about reading about it? Not just my story, but it can be used to help somebody else. So you mentioned that about trauma. You mentioned about emotionalism, or somebody that goes through something. When somebody writes, right, and they say they want to share it, how do you help somebody that's still kind of locked in to be able to come out more? Because writing is great, but how do we encourage them? How do you, because you're the professional, how do you encourage them to just, come on, you can do it? How do you encourage?
I tell them, especially as Black women and the Black community, well, the Black and Brown community, therapy is not a normal thing.
Yeah.
It's ostracized. It's not our first option, right? So I'll say something like, your story can help someone that's too afraid to go to therapy. Your story can change their lives. That could be that moment where they're like, this is what I need to fix, this is what I need to change, this is going to be a pivotal moment in my life that I'm going to do the inner work and change my situation or change my perspective or my mindset. So I try to use a thought process like that because that's so relevant, that a lot of people will go to a book, a self-help book that's like the top selling books, in America right now. They'll do that versus, making an appointment for a therapist or going back to church or praying or something like that. And that can be a way that you can help them change their lives. Yeah.
Really, really true. Natasha chimed in, Sade, and she said, "This is so inspiring as a inspiring creative writer." Now you actually have, see that?
Oh, okay.
She's listening. She also said that she loves that your writing becomes the voice, and then she said, "Agreed. Your writing can be therapeutic, not just for you, but for your readers as well."
Yes, that's so true. So true.
Yeah, so I just wanted to mention, and also Elisa's chiming in, has joined us tonight, Catherine, Christina, and also Melissa. And ladies, as you're listening to Sade talk about writing and what it does and how it really truly inspires you from the inside out.
Yes.
And that's what I like about it. It's inspiration from the inside out. We want you to write something in the comment. We want you to like. We want you to share. If you have a question for Sade before we end the show tonight, write it in the chat because she can probably give you a little tip on how you can keep going or just write a little bit more about it. But Sade, while they're thinking, what would you say to Catherine, Elise, Christina, Natasha, Melissa? What would you say to them tonight? They're listening to your voice. They know there's a story behind your story. In other words, story behind your story. So what would you say to them tonight? Because we all have a story.
Yes. And that's it. No, that's it right there. We all have a story and you need to share it. Like my mission is to build confidence in writers or aspiring writers so that way they can be bold enough and brave enough to share their testimonies because their testimonies will change someone's life. Like you're holding on to this story, you're holding on to that pain or to that situation or to that regret, and instead of releasing it, you're damaging yourself. You need to get that out. If not for yourself, then for someone else. It will change. Like your story will change someone's life. That's it right there. That's the line. That's it.
Absolutely. So when somebody walks into your workshop, Sade, what is probably one of the first questions they ask?
How did I start? Yeah, that's it. How did I start? What's my inspiration? And for me, in the beginning, my inspiration was my life, some of the things that I was going through, whether it was me personally or things that I've seen growing up or through my friends' relationships. But then outside of that, like what I do with my workshops is to help writers and creatives to understand that you don't only have to tap into your own story. Sometimes we feel like, how many times can I write about this bad relationship? Or how many times can I write about, this domestic violence situation or my traumas from childhood or my mommy issues or my daddy issues or whatever it may be, right? Instead, so with inspiration, that's where the creativity comes into play, is that you need to look at these other sources as inspiration. Music has been one of my biggest muses since I started writing. I would use like song titles as the title to my story and then go from there. I had a book when I was in high school called Crazy in Love when Beyonce dropped Crazy in Love and wrote a story based on the title and what I thought Crazy in Love meant. So using other sources like that, like music, art, film, you can't tell me that you watch a movie and you're not inspired. Or I'll ask a question about like your favorite book. If you could rewrite the ending, what would you do differently? Or if the character had its own spin-off, like what would that story look like? So trying to find other things to discuss outside of their own lives and their own story.
Got it. Well, you had two questions. Yeah, our guest tonight. I'm going to start with Melissa. Melissa says, I know writing comes from the heart. I feel at times when writing and letters, I feel at times when writing and letters or cards, I get very long winded and my message gets lost. How can I be short and sweet but still be meaningful? I'm going to let you answer that, and then Natasha has a question.
Sure, that's a great question, actually.
Yes.
Because my poems are very short. I'm like the queen of the micro poem. So I would say when reviewing it, look at like words or sentences that you can cut short, or is there any look for any repetitiveness within what you're saying. Is there a word that can be used that can sum up, the entire sentence or the subject of it? Just look for things like that to help shorten it, so that way it could be more direct. And I know at times we can, you know when we're talking in circles because we're afraid to say what we're really feeling. So think about what you're trying to say and just write that. I hope that helps.
Yeah, that was very good point. Natasha chimed in tonight, and her question is, if someone wanted to go the route of a poetry ebook, oh, that's interesting, for their first book, do you encourage that, or should they actually do a hard copy book?
So it depends. Like when I was releasing my collection of poetry side pieces, I actually did a poll on Instagram and Facebook and asked my readers, do you prefer ebooks, hard copies? And most the vote came back as hard copies or paperback. So that's the route that I went. Audiobooks are a good option to ebook because that's very popular now. So I would opt in for either an audiobook or a paperback, because when you go out, if you're going out to perform your poetry or read your poetry, it's always good to have copies on hand so that, a lot of people want your signature, when you blow up, not if you blow
Right.
up. And
That's good.
so that's a good way to keep in contact, and that's your business card. I don't use business cards anymore. I have my book and it has all of my contact information in there. Or I'll reference my website now. But yeah, I would say gauge your audience and see what they prefer and then go that way, because those are the people that's going to be purchasing.
Great answer. That was really good. Listen, this has been so good, Sade. Can my team put Sade's information? If you want her information, we're going to put it up on the screen. This has been awesome. So to contact Sade, you can email her at Sade, the chocolate muse, musc.com. Reach out to Sade. She has given us some great tips for those that are considering writing, for those that feel creative and or inspired to write. Listen, she has a workshop that's going to be coming up. We want to visit her website so that we can go and get all that information. So tonight, Sade, I want to thank you so much for being on Real Talk. We want to invite you back again. Kind of keep us we want to know what's going on with your workshops. We want to stay in tune to what's going on. So to my viewing audience, as always, thank you so much for your support. And thank you so much for joining Sade tonight as we learn what it's like to be a writer. We'll see you next week on Real Talk with Jean Price. Have a good night.
See yourself as an artist when you go to work every day. See yourself as someone who gets to create a masterpiece through your work regardless of what you do. I think every single one of us has a need for creative expression. We all have in our hearts a longing to go to work every day and to create. That's part of what makes us special. Actually, let me put it this way. We all have a creative longing to realize our potential. It's one of the most fundamental of all human hunger. But Edison's a fascinating guy. He had close to 2,000 patents in his life. He was asked, what's the secret if you're a genius? You know what he said? These people get up every day. They do many things. I get up every day. I do a few. I think it's an impotent way to live to say it's because of other people and it's because of circumstances that I'm not playing my best game. My life changed when I realized a simple idea, which is life is a mirror. And life gives us not what we want. Life gives us who we are.